We're recording. We are recording.
We are now recording.
Are we doing an intro?
Yeah, we always do an intro. They're just generally pretty pants.
Are you going to intro?
Yeah, okay. Hello and welcome to Will I Tell? Right. We've been waffling on a bit, so we're going to try a few new things today that hopefully cut down on how much we chat and how long we take. So we've got a few 2-minute challenges, and that will hopefully stop Elliot boring you to death. So today, following up on a question from my mate Paigey, which will come up on the screen now, which is about half-court press. So just going to chat a bit around half-court press. I think my thoughts have changed with it over a period of time. I grew up playing quite an old team who used to use it, in my opinion, in quite a negative sense. So it was about shutting down a game towards the end, holding on for a draw, holding on for a 1-goal lead, just by congesting the pitch between the ball and our goal, parking the bus, that sort of stuff. Now, I look at it differently now. I don't think it's that. I don't necessarily think it's not that. I just don't think it's exclusively that. For me, it's about how, as a team, we manipulate space on the pitch. So from an attacking sense, if we sit at half court, we're creating space in behind the opposition defence to counter into. Likewise, if we're defending, we're also denying space in between the ball and our goal. And therefore, the next thing I would be thinking about using it is to do with speed and to do with pace of players. So quick players like space, they eat space up. And I think if I've got a quick forward line and we know that the back line of the opposition is not particularly slow, then I can exaggerate that matchup by playing half court, because as that opposition defender steps up to outlet higher and we create space in behind them, we're going to be able to utilise that space better than they are. Likewise, if our defence is slower than their forward line, half court neutralises that a little bit. So we're looking at space and how we manipulate it as a team. We're looking at speed of players, and therefore we'd look at the matchups in our team and the opposition team, both of individuals and of lines. That's kind of my thoughts around it. Elliot, go on.
Just going to say, I think the thing, like you've said there, is it's very much, well, it was presented to me the same as, let's shut the game down, let's park the bus. I think if you present it to your players as an opportunity to counter-attack, because we're good at counter-attacking, it becomes a totally different message, and their mindset from it changes. So our coach had to break down very much we're at half court, it's passive, we can chill, we can rest legs. Actually, it should be really hard work, and probably harder work when you go forward.
And the big struggle I find with a lot of teams is actually allowing so much space. The mentality, and it's a bit like zone actually, the mentality of then when the ball is coming up to you to become very, very active. It's almost that teams struggle to go from quite passive and just holding to then being aggressive and pressing. I think, anyway, are you ready to do a 2-minute challenge, Elliot?
Yeah.
This is how we started way back when in Dublin, into Autobahn. 2 minutes. Go.
Right. I think if you're setting up a half-court press, key thing, as Will says, is the mindset of the players. Why are we doing it? It's important that effectively what it means is we are setting up within our halfway line. So we're using half of the court, as it were, sort of a basketball-y phrase, I guess, indoor-y phrase, to set up our lines of defence. And what we're trying to do is condense these lines so these lines become closer together. Whereas with a 3-quarter press, what you end up with is these big pockets of space, because we're more spread out. Our defensive lines as such are further apart, which means you create bigger one-on-one matchups. So a bit like zone, we can create in a half court, we can create lots of pressure to the ball by just condensing the lines of space. For me, I think it's really important you set your line of defence. So if we just say we're going to defend the halfway line, what actually happens is we end up sinking and coming back and even further into our pitch. So you have to set a line of defence, and I usually use 5 yards over the halfway. So when the opposition get the ball up into this area, we're going to look and press and be aggressive. Okay, here's an opposition that I prepared earlier. So if the opposition set up, the idea being what they should be looking to do is stretch the space, and what we're trying to do is condense the space, like we said. So as the ball is being played, you would expect them to try and promote halfbacks. And like Will said, 2 phases of thought is the ball going to go into an area where, not the ball, is the ball going to go into the area where we can get pressure to it and win it and turn it over in a trap by funneling them through the middle? Or are we going to set our forwards slightly narrower and they're going to do a lot of work left to right to try and just deny passing lanes? For me, it's really important on the outside here, these guys are ready to intercept and step from a half-back pass. Obviously, we're man-to-man, so we need to make sure that we get our setup right in our man-to-man. And then the question is, what are you going to do with your spare man? How are you going to release players to then engage with the extra players that are overloaded? Are you going to rely on your forwards to do the work? Time. That's too slow, wasn't
it? Isn't it?
Cool, there we go. Right, what would you add?
If we just touch on there, this idea of why you might play more denial and why I might play more trap, that could be quite interesting.
So for me, I think with the denial, the idea being that these guys would all shift, and let's say this forward's job is to get to at least halfway. What we're then looking to do is, as the ball is in this side, for example, we're congesting this side of the park. So actually then anything that goes in, we can get numbers back to reverse press. And naturally what happens obviously is that their players lead over and we end up condensing the space further because now we've got more players in even a quarter of the pitch as opposed to a full pitch. That make sense?
Yeah. So my feeling, and this is my issues really with deny versus trap. Firstly, I think trap is more positive.
Agree.
Because generally I'm looking at this as counter. So I would have a wider forward line, and we'll speak about this when we get our zone video out, but that's to incentivize in here. A bigger gap in here and a bigger gap in here incentivizes the ball coming through. I'm not saying that this person is man marking in here, so that's slightly misleading. We'll just hide him over there. But I'm trying to incentivize them to come into here, into my congestion that I've created. And so therefore I might project my spare man slightly higher.
Yeah.
The reason I don't like, where's the ball gone? It doesn't matter. The reason, follow my cursor.
Behind the red.
The reason I don't like man-to-man half being narrow and being denying is my feeling is that if my cursor's the ball, as the ball comes round, if we're too narrow, we are so close to our goal that you end up, if this person carries and sort of breaks the game line of the forwards there, or if they manage to release this pass into here, you tend to end up with a lot of circle penetration around the T-spots quite quickly because you haven't got as much depth on the pitch to defend with.
Yeah.
So that's why I would use a trap. I think it is just my opinion. Congestion is our friend at half court, and we use those numbers.
The reason I think, or I like to have them slightly closer as a forward line, and again, it's personal preference, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about utilising your spare. So can you get him, as you say, if it's coming across, hopefully this guy is clever enough to start sneaking and getting a 1-on-1 matchup. Can we set a trap there? So can we release our spare to set a trap on the halfback as he's receiving it? Or if he's up here, our spare picks him. And then the idea being, and now we've got a 3-on-3 matchup. So we can go, if they go to a back three, oh, there's the ball. We can start to wing press and step out. And I think probably the bit I missed was about this line of defence. So as their forward line is in this position, we have got the opportunity to sneak and try and win a 1-on-1 matchup with him, particularly if there's a weaker centre-back. Yeah, I agree with you totally, though. What it does open up is that ball down the line, and that's where you've got to be really proactive.
And I think this is really key, is that you're talking about the skill set of your players, but you're also explaining. I mean, we've looked at half-court press there. There's lots of little variations within that, but you're explaining what is good about this way of playing it and what is a risk of this way of playing it, and giving that information to the players, because that will then give them a better understanding of what they're likely to see in the game and how they're going to have to adapt to it in the moment. And I think we've spoken previously, haven't we, as well, about having square fullbacks. And the issue with having square fullbacks in here and the opportunity that presents for turnover. So again, that's the players having this positive mindset. If we see square fullbacks, be ready to jump in, intercept the ball between them and go, because you're going to be in the D.
Yeah, and I think definitely like getting them closer together for me. If we're wide apart, you end up with isolated one-on-ones. I really like the thought of getting a wing press round to put pressure on. Again, it's a gamble if you've got to be organised in behind. But I think you can be really aggressive as a front three, as opposed to being aggressive in here. I like the thought of forward line being aggressive, but that's because I'm a forward.
Yeah, well, the point you've just made there about why forwards leads to isolated one-on-ones, that's why I would project my spare player into more support of those front three normally.
Your 2-minute challenge is to do the flip of that then. So how would you beat a half-court press? How would you outlet against it?
2 minutes, half-court, outletting against it. Firstly, be aware what the opposition are probably trying to do is to draw you up, create space in behind you to counter, win the ball and counter into. So my first thought is definitely about wherever the ball is, that we're not flat, that we are keeping some sort of depth and counter protection. So if the ball goes over to the right, we've still got people in here, that if we turn over possession in here, then they're able to get into a position to defend. All right? So that's first point is around counter protection. Second point, a half-court press is generally quite wide, mainly because, which is similar to a zone, maybe because they want you to play the ball into the congestion through the middle of the pitch. So what my first thought is, can we compress their press, get them narrower together? So we would do this by playing inside and see if we can compress them. If we can, then it creates space for us to play out and round the other side, or quite simply play straight into that space anyway, into that new space that we created. If they don't compress, fair enough. Right? If they don't compress and we can play in and they don't come into the middle, then we might be able to play through straight away as we would in a zone. Just be aware that is the trap that they want. They want you to go inside. Another way to look at it is, can we change our outlet shape and get 4 shorter passes? This will really help with the compression as well, I think. Get 4 shorter passes straight into the press. That is 2 minutes. Boom, nailed it. I'm so good at this. Mic drop.
Is that it? I think the key thing is that you're trying to dictate what they can do. So as an outletting team, it's always a chess game. I see it as the pressing team are trying to win the ball in this way. How are we going to then beat that? And I think projecting halfbacks, like you started to talk about there, is really important, but also making sure we play with a wide forward line. So the forwards can be a bit less runny here and actually ask the question of the players and say, right, are you going to come and mark me out here, or are you going to leave me free? Can we overload the sideline? And a bit like we said before, can we then start to ask the question of, right, creating and making this half really big rather than sitting in the middle of the pitch where they want us to be potentially and allowing them to attack us? Can we start to create these shorter passes around the outside so we can gain some of that entry that you spoke about earlier?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's really good. And I think particularly if you are playing with the sort of the trap style half court, by having your forwards wider, you then create maybe more space for you to play through the middle in.
Like you say there, having the forwards wide, what you are then creating is this one-on-one matchups that we want to try and avoid in the middle here. So if these guys can play in, swerving the ball again, but if they can play in, then you've got this space for this player to pick and roll and have a go. And I think that's what's important, is you make the space as big, the small space, the narrow condensed space they want as a pressing unit, you make it big and you make it wide, because the pitch is a massive place when you set up in the right sort of shape. Yeah.
Half court, one of the reasons people would play half court obviously is to create that congestion between ball and goal. One big issue that teams have is they want to play direct through it with big passes. I mean, half court's designed to neutralise big passes. They tend to lead to interceptions. So when it was talking about projecting, having 4 short passes straight in behind the press, actually you play short into there, and as you touched on with the wide short passes all the way through, because it's more congested anyway. Actually, if you can start to play a little 1-2 short passes once you've penetrated the forward line, you get a lot more success. I haven't spoken about practice design, which I know is really popular with people, but there are several things that we've spoken about in our practice design previously around outlet. I think people can be reasonably savvy in just using those outlet practices to both look at the press and the outlet side, and maybe manipulate or challenge the defensive team to sit deeper or see if they can create space to counter into.